Yep, it's another Gibson Guitars video. What's going on, everybody? SeanPierceJohnson here, and by now I'm sure you all have read the news. Gibson Guitars is in dire financial straits and on the verge of bankruptcy. This is some pretty troubling news if you ask me, as someone who owns several Gibsons, is a Gibson player, and who appreciates the overall contribution that Gibson Guitars have made to the music that I love and has influenced me over the years. I don't want to see the company go under and not exist anymore. If you think about it, it would really be a shame to see all that history just go away. And to make matters worse, some people have been sharing the news with a very ding-dong, the wicked witch is dead kind of tonality, which is just kind of unfair to the people who work at Gibson. But I did notice something as I've seen this article shared over and over again, and I'm not seeing the original article that I came across that brought this news to light. If anything, I've just seen that original article picked apart and used for whatever interest that whatever news site seems to want to bring out. Nobody's really using the facts in a good, constructive way. So let's back up to that original article, which I will link in the description below for you all to check out, and let's examine what they have to say about the whole situation. So the original article that I found is from the Nashville Post. It's dated February 9th, 2018, and it begins on a pretty promising note. Quote, Gibson Brands today announced that the company made a $16.6 million coupon payment to the holders of its $375 million 8.875% senior secured notes due 2018. Wow, that's a mouthful. That's not a very long statement, but it is a very promising thing to note. The fact that Gibson is making payments on their loans is a good sign. Nobody that's in debt wants to stay in debt. But what really kind of sets the tone for a lot of the firestorm that surrounded this recent bit of news is the departure of CFO Bill Lawrence, who had been with the company for less than a year. The article then goes on to state the financial figures of it, so I'm going to reference that right now. He's left after less than a year on the job, 6 months before $375 million of senior secured notes will mature. On top of that, another $145 million in bank loans will immediately come due if those notes are not refinanced by July 23rd. So let's stop right there. One of the things that I see a lot right now is that people seem to think that Gibson is going to go under tomorrow, next week, next month, July 23rd. That's really how much time that Gibson has in order to get their finances in order or negotiate some sort of extension or new payment plan or some sort of debt relief with the banks, the loan people, whoever they need to talk to in order to get their money right. It's the departure and these large financial numbers and deadlines that really have people assuming the worst, and to be expected. It's definitely understandable, and leading many people to speculate that it could very well lead to a drastic shift in upper management, namely the either resignation or ousting of current CEO Henry J. I still can't pronounce his last name to save my life. Now, according to this Nashville Post article, Kevin Cassidy, a senior officer at Moody's Investor Services, says that Henry has essentially three options. His team could negotiate an exchange of their debt coming due for new notes. He could also be persuaded or forced to give up some of his equity in exchange for debt relief, or he may end up taking one of the most globally recognized brands that calls Nashville home to bankruptcy court. Now, hold on a second. Let's stop with that bankruptcy court thing right here, too. Bankruptcy is a really weird legal business gray area that people that aren't really in the business world don't have much of an understanding. Now, granted, I've only done my layman's research on this, but what I understand about bankruptcy is this. Now, there's various different types of bankruptcy, the whole chapters thing that you sometimes hear about. It's a little confusing, so I've referenced alllaw.com here to find the most common forms, which we have Chapter 7, 11, 12, and 13. Now, the one that Gibson will most likely go to should it come to this is Chapter 11. That's the most common type of bankruptcy that you hear from large corporations. The thing that you have to realize, though, is that when a company goes into bankruptcy, they're essentially going to bankruptcy court. And what they're doing is they're working with the court system and the banks to figure out a way that maybe they could potentially refinance some of this debt or figure out a way to pay it back. Sometimes that means that the company goes under, but other times it doesn't mean that the company goes under. Is the potential for an investor to come in at the 11th hour and pick Gibson up out of the grave and bring it back? That is definitely a possibility. So don't think that Gibson is down for the count just yet. Now, to make this whole matter extremely interesting, just yesterday, February 19th, the Nashville Post shared another article related to Gibson brands. Benson Wu, the former CFO who worked with Gibson for a period of time during 2015, is returning to the company in order to resume his old post. What's really interesting about this new appointment is that, according to the article, Wu makes a career out of working with companies who are in dire need, they're in distress, or they're in periods of major change. We have this interesting flip-flop at Gibson right now with their finances. They've got a lot of debt coming due or that they need to refinance by the late summertime, ironically seemingly around the time of the Summer NAMM show. And at the same time, they seem to be making strides to try to work to that point and get themselves out of the hole that they're in. In fact, in that same Nashville Post article from the 19th, Henry J. himself says that he fully expects the bonds to be refinanced in the ordinary course of business. Okay, fine. And that he's working on a budget planning process and that it's important for them to get back to the financial success. And that's admirable. At least they're trying to not let the bad press get to them. I'm sure this has not been easy on him, his team, or really any of the other employees at Gibson Guitars. But nevertheless, this is still a very troubling scenario and one that I'm not happy to see. What do I think is going to happen to Gibson Guitars as a whole as they move through 2018? It seems like 2018 is definitely a critical year for the company. Now, saying as someone who loves Gibson and has heard many of your suggestions and has read many of your comments on the last Gibson video, I think one of the big things that Gibson could do to change their fortunes is really to reach out to people like myself and like you guys who are the players, the people buying the instruments. Basically, just reaching out to the players, showing them the new guitars in an environment that they're not obligated to purchase anything, and maybe that they're allowed to give their honest feedback on. Now, the high prices are also another thing. I still love my Les Pauls, there's no doubt about that, but I would love to be able to try some of the more ornate and upscale models. Overall, with this video, I just want to share with you what the original Nashville Post article said. It's been picked apart way too many times for me to count, and I just want to use their words, and you can find that original article and the article from the 19th linked in the description below. And now it's your turn to share with me what you all think of this current Gibson situation. Leave your comments below and don't forget to click the subscribe button when you see it. We're going to be taking a closer look at Gibson Guitars and I'll provide a little bit of history and a little bit more information for you guys in the near future. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time, I wish you guys all great tone and happy stomping. Cheers, my friends.